Hey y'all, my name is Brian Valdez and I am back to do another literature review video. And we are going to review the story The Gambler from my main man, Mr. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Um, but before we do, I am very excited because I got a new subscriber. That means my channel has two subscribers. The first one is my good friend Rhonda, who's been in my corner since the beginning. So thank you, Rhonda. You're awesome. And the second person, I don't know because their information is private, but thank you so much, second subscriber. You made my day. This is my new subscriber. Happy dance. Thank you so much. So, uh, really love you guys. Um, I'm just so impressed that anybody wants to listen to my thoughts about books. I love books, and most of all, I love Dostoevsky. He's just so important to me, and I said last time he is my literary hero. Um, a little while back, there was a meme going around the internet where women would ask their husbands and boyfriends how often they think about the Roman Empire. And my question to anybody who reads Russian literature is how often do you think about something this guy wrote? For me, it would be pretty much every day. Every time I look at my bookshelf, I am some quote or some vignette that he wrote comes back to my mind, and I'm always pondering something something that he wrote. So, but today we're going to talk about the story The Gambler, and I am, like I said last time, I'm following a suggested reading list that comes from the Russian Lit Girl channel. I'll put the link in my description to that channel, and that is actually a Russian literature graduate student, and so she is very knowledgeable about everything having to do with Russian literature. And so she put a video together where if you want to get into Russian literature, she suggests some works that you should read. Um, and she included two stories by Dostoevsky. Last time we talked about the story White Nights, and this time we're going to talk about The Gambler. And I always like to look at the background of the book and kind of what's going on in the author's life when he wrote or he or she wrote the story. So the story, The Gambler, was written in 1866, the same year, by the way, that Dostoevsky published Crime and Punishment. So, big year for Dostoevsky, big year for literature. I don't know, I know that Crime and Punishment was serialized, so he put it out in installments, but I don't know if he wrote the whole thing first and then put it out in chunks, or if he kind of wrote each chunk and then released it separately. So, but if he wrote The Gambler and also was writing sections of Crime and Punishment during the same year at the same time, that's pretty amazing. But he was a genius. Um, and another thing I found that was interesting is that he wrote The Gambler in 26 days, which is incomprehensible to me. I've tried to write and it takes me so long. But the story is about 140 pages in my book, so about 40,000 words. He wrote it with the help of a stenographer, a woman named Anna, who later became his wife, and they collaborated on all of his works going forward. So Dostoevsky, this story comes from kind of the middle period of his output in 1866, and he was actually under a lot of financial pressure and debt when he wrote the story. That might be have a lot to do with his how fast he was putting things out at that time because he needed money. And one of the reasons why he needed money is because he had a gambling habit, an addiction really, that was causing a lot of problems in his relationships and with his family. Uh, so when he wrote The Gambler, he's really giving us a little biographical picture into his personal life and struggles, which I also think is interesting. It takes a lot of courage on his part to put those struggles into on paper. So after 1866, he he kind of takes off, and that's when you have Crime and Punishment, and most of the bigger works coming after that year, with finally the last book I know was uh, the Brothers Karamazov, which I have not read yet, but I will get to it. But I think I believe that's 1880. So everything picks up after 1866, and with The Gambler and Crime and Punishment. The last story we talked about, White Nights, was I think 1849, somewhere around there. But that's one of his early stories. So there's like a 20-year gap between White Nights and The Gambler. Just in case you're interested, I thought this was also interesting. So they play roulette a lot in this book. That's the main thing that in the story, The Gambler. That's the main thing that they're doing. They're playing roulette. So for the context of the story, which I thought was interesting, is that roulette was invented in the 1600s by Blaise Pascal, actually, the famous mathematician in France. It means little wheel, roulette. Uh, but in the 1840s, they invented the modern European type of roulette, which only has 1 0. So there's a series of numbers, and the wheel is red and black, and a series of numbers. And in the European version, it only has 1 0, which gives people, the gamblers, it gives them a better chance of winning. Prior to the 1840s, the wheel had actually 2 0s, which made it harder for gamblers to win. But they removed one of the zeros, so that made the game popular among Europeans, and it gave them a better chance, gamblers a better chance of winning. And they actually did that in Germany. They introduced the new European version with the single zero in Germany, and that's where the story takes place actually. So Dostoevsky is writing about something. He wrote the book in 1866, but it's taking place in Germany around the time when that new version of roulette was being released. So just to put it in context. Actually, I thought this was interesting also. According to ChatGPT, the game with the highest odds of winning, if you play it correctly, is blackjack. Roulette is somewhere in the middle. The European version, you have more chance of winning because there's only 1 0. Us in America, we make it a little harder because our wheel has 2 0s. So it's harder for gamblers to win, and the house makes more money. But that's sort of the context and the history of the story. So it's Dostoevsky giving us a little picture of his personal biography and a little bit into his world and struggles. The plot is the basic plot outline is that we follow a tutor. His name is Alexei. He's a tutor for a wealthy Russian family, and they're in the gambling town. Like I said, in Germany, um, it's kind of probably analogous to Atlantic City on the east coast of the United States, but a gambling town with a casino. And so the family is there, and there's the general. He's the patriarch of the family. There's two women, really, well, three. Two young women, Polina and a French woman, and then there's the granny. The granny is it's a wealthy family, but granny's the one with the money. So, and I love the granny. The granny in the story, she reminds me of my grandma because she has, some old people, they kind of have no filter in the things that they say. This is definitely the granny in this story. She has no filter. She's loud and bombastic, and she says whatever she wants, and she goes around insulting people and cracking jokes, and the people can't really do anything about it because they want to stay on Granny's good side because they want to inherit the money that she has. So, but it reminded me so much of my grandma because my grandma was sort of the same way. She had no filter in what she said, and she used to say, "Brian, I just call it like I see it," which was kind of a code word for saying, "I'm going to say whatever I want, and I can do that because I'm old." uh, so it's good to see that kind of stereotype transcends hundreds of years and different cultures. Apparently, everybody's granny is the same. But so Granny is the wealthy one, and all of the people. I think there's a Russian prince involved. There's a French marquis, member of the nobility, and so Granny has been sick, and everybody wants to know who is going to inherit the money once Granny has passed away. So that's the major plot line of the story. And then there's also different love relationships going on. It's like who's gonna end up with who. Like the general, he wants to marry a girl that's like 25 years younger than him, but he can't do it unless he inherits the money from his grandma because the girl wants to be rich. And Alexei, the tutor, he's in love with a woman named Polina, but they have a complicated relationship, which we have to figure out what's going to happen with them. And that was actually one of my favorite parts of the book. The story. I think that the story is worth reading just for the interaction between Polina and Alexei. um, so Dostoevsky's gonna resolve all that. We're gonna figure out we're gonna see what happens with Granny and her money, and then we're gonna see who ends up with who and all of that. But I won't spoil it because I want you to read it and then be surprised. So it's like I said, it's about 140 pages, and I guess it took me about a little over a week to read it. I'm not a particularly fast reader, but sort of the way that I judge whether a book is a good book is whether I want to rearrange my schedule to make time to read it. And for this book, I certainly did. I wanted to see what was going to happen. Then there's a lot of high stakes gambling that goes on, and just with sums that I couldn't even comprehend. But but So in in some parts, it was actually kind of like a thriller because you wanted to turn the pages to see what's going to happen. Especially during the gambling parts, it's exciting. And then I was also surprised because some of this, some of the book is the story is kind of funny in parts, and I know Dostoevsky is not really known for his humor, but there were some parts that made me laugh. So um, there's that. And about halfway through the story, there's a major plot twist that happens. There's a few different plot twists, but there's one big major one in the middle of the story. So part of the humor is just seeing how the different characters respond to the major plot twist. Everyone's doing these schemes about uh, this is what I'm gonna do after I get grandma's money, and we are going to and then I'm gonna marry this person, and the plot twist throws all of the schemes into chaos. So that was fun to see that. And again, I won't spoil it because I want you to be surprised by the plot twist. Um, so that's the basic plot of the story, and like I said, one of the one of the most interesting things to me was the relationship between Alexei, the tutor, and Polina. And I want to read just a little bit, just to give you some idea of the way the story goes and their sort of relationship. This is how this is on page 409 of my edition, and this is one passage where Alexei is talking about Polina. He says, "Why and how I love you, I don't know. Perhaps you are not at all nice, really. You know, fancy, I don't know whether you are good or not, even to look at. You certainly have not a good heart. Your mind may very well be ignoble." So, on the one hand, Alexei is saying, uh, I don't even know if you're good to look at. And then, so that's on one hand, he's saying that. But on another passage, which I think was my favorite passage in the story, he says, this is on page 457. So that was on 409. This is on page 457. He says, "But I was troubled about Polina. Her fate was being decided. I divined that, but I regret to say that it was not altogether her fate that troubled me. I wanted to fathom her secrets. I wanted her to come to me and say, 'I love you.' And if not that, if that was sentenced insanity, then, well, what was there to care about? Did I know what I wanted? I was like one demented. All I wanted was to be near her, in the halo of her glory, in her radiance, always, forever, all my life. I knew nothing more. And could I leave her?" That I think is beautiful. I mean, on the one hand, he's saying, I don't even know if you're good to look at. But then he says, uh, all I wanted was to be near her, in the halo of her glory, in her radiance, always, forever. All my life, I knew nothing more. And could I leave her? So, that's just to give you a little taste of their relationship. I mean, it's up and down and love and hate, going back and forth, and so I one thing I think is interesting, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about addiction because it's a major theme within this book, and I kind of thought, and I don't know if Dostoevsky planned it this way, but to me, it seemed like Paulina is Alexei's gambling addiction kind of personified. So on the one hand, he loves her. Then at other times, he hates her and he wants to leave her, but he can't. And then there are um, there's one time or a couple times actually where Polina makes Alexei do things he doesn't want to do, like she baits him one time into insulting a German baron and baroness, which is kind of funny when that happened. But so she's 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 forcing him to do things he doesn't want to do. He feels like he doesn't have control, but he can't let her go. He can't leave her. So to me, it's kind of like she represents his addiction, which which is which is a brilliant thought and a brilliant way to put it. I think on Dostoevsky's the way he thought that out. But to be a little bit to talk a little bit about that theme, I don't personally. I've never been a gambler. Like I think I've been into a casino maybe twice in my life, so I don't know much about that, and I don't pretend to know anything really about addiction. I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, and I don't have any training. So whatever I say, please take it with a grain of salt. I don't know anything about gambling addiction, but I do know about the P word. And I'm not going to say the actual word because I don't want um, YouTube to ding my video, but I have pretty much had I would say, a 37-year struggle with uh, inappropriate videos, movies, the kind that I'm talking about. Um, and I see some of the hallmarks of addiction in the story through Alexei and his gambling habit that I've seen. I see in my own life, which I can relate to. Uh, One is rationalization. Like Alexei tries to rationalize his gambling habit. At one point, he says, "Hey, it's just another form of commerce. Like it's a business. It's like a business." Which I guess in a way is kind of true because when I think about the stock market, isn't that a form of gambling? But so that's one thing he says. Like it's really no big deal. It's just another form of business. And then he says what I I say or used to say in regards to the videos, like, hey, everybody's doing it. It's really no big deal. Like, it's not hurting anyone. Um, and then, and then another big one is I can stop anytime. Like Alexei's like he's always tomorrow things will be better. Tomorrow things will be different. Tomorrow things will end. But just in my own life, I want to say this because it's just on my heart and it's been such a struggle for me. Again, I don't know anything about gambling, so I don't want to talk about gambling, and I'm not trained or anything. So, but I'm just speaking from my heart that in my own life, those kind of rationalizations are a lie. So, yes, in America, a large percentage of people are watching those videos and doing that. But so but the bottom line is everybody isn't doing it. And for example, in my life, like, is everyone showing up late for work because they were up late watching videos? No, that's something that I've done in the past that I felt shame over. So, and then you say it's really no big deal, but if it's no big deal, then why do you want to stop? And why are you trying to hide it? Uh, and why do you want to stop but you can't if it's no big deal? Because it is. It is a big deal. Uh, and for me, there's a lot of shame involved. And I see this with Alexei too in the story because there's this external thing that's exercising control over you. You want to stop. You want to have control over your life, but you can't stop. And just that feeling of powerlessness brings shame. And one thing I see Alexei doing in the story is that he kind of snaps out. Like he'll pick fights with people just because he's angry, and that's something that I think is a product of shame. And again, it's the power of Dostoevsky's writing is that he's able to take those human experiences and human psychology and paint that picture in words, in a compelling story that you want to follow and want to read about. Because I have also experienced that where I got this shame going on in my life that I can't really tell anybody about because I don't feel comfortable, and then it just makes me angry because I want to stop but I can't, uh, and then I end up, snapping at someone over something stupid, and but I can't really explain what the real reason is and why I'm mad because I don't want anybody else to know. So just in based on my own experience, again, take it as a grain of salt, and but it is a big deal if it's making you feel if it's making you feel bad, if it's making you feel shame, if it's making you feel guilt, then it is a big deal. And and for me, I would say number one, get help. If you want to stop, get the help you need. Um, find a support group at whatever is best for you. I mean, for me, I talk to my pastor every month, and we're working through it. And I have a plan for changing that part of my behavior. Um, it's like I said, it's been a 37-year battle. So if I could get down on my knees and tell someone not to get involved in it, I would. Please don't make the mistakes that I've made. If you know don't start down that path. If and if you have already, please get the help you need. I'm not here to judge. I would be the last person to have the right to judge anyone. Uh, but So that's what I want to say about that. uh, you know, there there is victory. You can heal. You can change your behavior, and I know for a fact that Dostoevsky did overcome his his gambling addiction. Uh, I mean, for me, a lot has to do with my relationship with Christ, uh, and you know, believing strongly in Christianity. So there are ways, and there is hope. Just wanted to say that. I hope that helps somebody. Um, but uh, so that is really my thoughts on the story. I won't spoil the ending, but I do wish that I could spoil it because I have a lot of questions, particularly about Polina and Alexi's relationship. So if there is someone who read this story and watches this video, um, please. My question is, how did how do you think the fact that the fact that Alexei is a gambler influenced his relationship with Polina? And if he wasn't a gambler, would their relationship be different? Uh, that's my question. It's kind of vague, but I think to make it more specific, I would have to spoil some things that I don't want to spoil. So when you read the story, if you have read the story, please leave your opinion down in the comments. Uh, Whether you think things would be different based on Alexei's gambling. And I think that's all I want to say in this video. Again, my thanks to Russian Lit Girl. I'm going to keep reading the books that she suggested. Please check my video description for a link to her channel. Subscribe and watch. And I've ordered the selected short stories from Anton Chekhov, which is another book that she recommended. And I'm very excited about that because I've never read anything by Chekhov, so it'll be a new experience for me. And then the last thing I will say is that I can't talk about Dostoevsky without mentioning the Underground Spirit podcast by Martyr Maid and Daryl Cooper. That is actually one of the few podcasts that I've watched repeatedly, which is a big time commitment because I think it's 5 hours long, and I think that I've listened to it at least 3 times. But it's a great podcast if you're interested at all in Dostoevsky's life and works. In that podcast, Daryl compares the life kind of arcs of Dostoevsky and Nietzsche, similarities and then differences. And it's not hyperbole for me to say that that podcast changed the way that I thought about the way that I'm doing things and just my relationships and things like that. So Daryl, if you ever watch this video, thank you so much for that podcast. Please go and give it a listen if you're at all interested in Dostoevsky, and I really hope that he does do some more literary type podcasts in the future. And then the very very final thing I want to do is a little kind of competition. So I've always wondered who is the better writer, Tolstoy or Dostoevsky. So I want to read one passage from Dostoevsky and one passage from Tolstoy. And I'll let you decide in the comments which is better. I chose a passage where both writers are describing a beautiful woman. So I will read page 413 where Dostoevsky, through Alexei, describes for us Polina. And this is what Alexei says about her. He says, I don't understand what there is fine in her. She is fine, though. She is. I believe she is fine. She drives other men off their heads, too. She's tall and graceful, only very slender. It seems to me you could tie her in a knot or bend her double. Her foot is long and narrow. Tormenting. Tormenting is just what it is. Her hair has a reddish tint. Her eyes are regular cat's eyes. But how profoundly and disdainfully she can look with them. So that is Dostoevsky's description of Polina. Oh, it just cracks me up. Well, I won't influence the judging, but who I think has a better description. Now I'm gonna read from War and Peace. I'm gonna read Tolstoy's description of Princess Helene. I, I, I've read about 600 pages of War and Peace, and I can't say enough about what I've read. It's just Tolstoy is a beautiful writer. I really can't find anyone who comes close. Even though I am such a huge fan of Dostoevsky. I personally I think Tolstoy is a better writer in terms of painting a picture, which I guess that gives away who I think wins the contest. But I've only read about 600 pages of War and Peace because stuff started happening to Natasha. And one thing about me is I get very attached to the characters in novels, and I was like, Leo, please don't hurt Natasha. So when things started happening to her, I put it down. But I'll go back to it eventually. I'll just have to put my helmet on and get some courage and keep on reading, because I really did enjoy this story. But this is how Tolstoy describes Princess Helene. He says, the Princess Helene smiled. She rose with the same unchanging smile with which she had first entered the room, the smile of a perfectly beautiful woman, with a slight rustle of her white dress trimmed with moss and ivy, with a gleam of white shoulders, glossy hair, and sparkling diamonds. She passed between the men who made way for her, not looking at any of them, but smiling on all, as if graciously allowing each the privilege of admiring her beautiful figure and shapely shoulders, back, and bosom, which, in the fashion of those days, were very much exposed. And she seemed to bring the glamour of the ballroom with her as she moved towards Anna Pavlovna. Helene was so lovely that not only did she not show any trace of coquetry, but, on the contrary, she even appeared shy of her unquestionable and all too victorious beauty. She seemed to wish, but to be unable, to diminish its effect. That is one of the passages I think about over and over again, because I can just picture that type of person in my mind. In my mind's eye, just a woman who is so beautiful that she's unable to diminish the effect of her beauty, even when she wants to. I don't know if any of those people exist in real life, but I can imagine them. Anyway, you be the judge. Who wins the battle of the Russian writers when it comes to describing beautiful women? Tolstoy or Dostoevsky? Anyway, that's my video for today. I definitely recommend reading The Gambler. It is a great story, and I think you will enjoy it. I hope you do. And like I always say, this channel and the world are a better place because you are here. Love you all. See you next time when we talk about another work of Russian literature. Bye bye.